there's a couple of cases where I can think of where, yeah, we've had long time students that didn't really want to test, and no, I understand that. I not the art of the art of Aikido, I think, should accommodate everybody. Okay, and we have, you know, I think for the super aggressive, for the goal oriented uh, student, you know, I think that there should be a home for the goal oriented student. That the act of testing and going through the test polishes all of these areas, and lends towards not, maybe not perfection, but improvement, right? Through the trial of going through the test, just by getting through it, all of the training and practice required to polish for the event of the test, you know, requires that individual to, you know, and practicing for that test in some ways is that goal oriented approach. If you know, if you know, it has to be good before you move on. It has to be good before, you know, you take that, you know, you take that test. Now, in contrast to the student who, you know, the guy, the can't, the person, they don't want to test, they don't really care. There's less incentive there. They're not there. There's less meat on the bone for the instructor. That student is there for other reasons. And I know this is exactly why we're having this conversation. And yes, they are, you know, they're not going to make it up, come up as quickly. They could possibly deter or in some ways become an obstacle, in some ways, if in line with what you're saying. But for me, I think there's a home for that student as well. So I think there's a home for everybody. And I think that back to the goal oriented approach, that it's an individual. Although you look at the class as a whole, you have to provide to the individuals what they need at some level. So the guy that doesn't want, the student that doesn't want to test, their sense of need is something different. It's not a certificate or a belt. Now, it might be social or something else, but they can still, I think, be an asset to the dojo. Maybe I'm going in different directions here.
Oh, no, just go, buddy. Steve, you wanted to interject. Go, buddy.
But Aaron, with that type of student, which I agree with you, there's a home for everybody, and it's up to them to take from it. But at what point do we put them with the other students? When will they start slowing down the class or that particular situation? So where do we do with that kind of student that's kind of hindering? That's a whole maybe different discussion. How do we cater to him? We still have to continue. We still got to continue the Q ranking. They'll just be back. They'll be staying there until they show progression. We've discussed this before, right?
In some ways, we have to, as we want to customize per individual, but at the same time, you have to pitch to the center.
Right.
You have to pitch to the.
So if there was a way that you could take that person, then when they came in, and you were able to accelerate their learning. So when they came back, they had retention. They had long-term, short-term retention, to where they were going like this, but also they're going like this.
You're talking about desire, and
pardon?
That's desire, I think, is what we're talking about. Desire.
No, I'm talking about the training technique, the strategy of approach.
Depends on their desire.
Pardon?
It sounds good. Yeah.
It's at Steve Wilson, $39.99. Go ahead. I'm sorry, buddy.
Oh, no. It's you know, well, what is this approach? You know, and it's, you know, we're back to the.
Yeah, I think what we can do is on this. I think it's going to lead into another podcast off of this area that we can kick it around a little bit. At this time, it's looking at from a training aspect. I think that this is attractive. This gives us tools that otherwise I don't see being initiated, but I see them being in Aikido training so much. I can't say other martial arts. I think in martial arts in general, this isn't very used very much. But almost every other discipline in the world demands this. For example, I don't know if you know who Joe Satriani is. He's one of the greatest guitarists and I was listening to him today about his teaching methodology, right? And he's saying, hey, new student, very first thing, I got to give structure to that student, which means you do a G chord like this, right? Then you go from here, then you go from there. Now, the exploration of that person going through that maybe leads into the other part of their trials, their failures, their growth, and all of that. But the attack of strategy becomes really, really important if I'm going to meet these needs of all these different people on the mat. And I submit to you that that if we start to, as a community, maybe looking at this and saying, hey, these tools seem really powerful, and how do I implement these tools? We're not only going to meet our personal needs, but I think the art in general is going to go higher and higher, because go there, pull out McDojo versus McReal Dojo, and it's as bright as day. And the question is, and I point the finger right in my face, is, oh crap, am I in McDojo or am I real? And the results of my students and how I train is important. But I have to have a reference point. I can say these pretty words and everything, but if I don't have somewhere where I challenge what I'm saying, where someone's going, well, how do you do that? Like, that's the question, right? It's there, bam, 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 bam. I have to learn that, learn how to implement to see. Go ahead, Steve. You had
I think your reference point is who trained you. And I think we always use our instructor, at least I do, from where our background's from. And you look at the core of the dedicated students, how far they progress and what they become. I mean, look at your core and your group, Aaron. Look at the solidness and the talent that has dedicated, who go, I mean, everything we have seen in all you guys that have progressed, it's just what Eugene just alluded on, dedicated, the goals, training hard. And then you see the subcore, they're still down there or they're gone. And we're always going to have that.
I got to interject. I like you. You went for it. I would challenge that.
What would you challenge?
I don't. You're right. We go to our sensei because that's what we know, right? But we go to our sensei because there's no, we trust and we say it's there. When you look at that and you challenge that, and you go, okay, how do the best in the world learn? What is the best way to teach? What is the best way to train, right? And not throwing out what our senseis have shown us, because
no, they gave us a seed, and we've taken that, and then it's up to us. That's what I kind of mean. We still have that reference point of what we learned, how we learned, and who from. I mean, I'm a product of all our 5 senseis in our teaching group. And then from there, I've developed my own. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I'm challenging, and I'm not saying this is God's truth, right? I'm just saying, from what I see, in martial arts, maybe in general, and I can't say all the other ones, only Aikido, I would say, because that's my art, is that in the dojo, what is being given is good. But when I step out of the dojo in the real world, away from the dojo, right, and I'm held to a standard that says, okay, you want to be a professional, you got to do this. And all these people are learning how to become quicker, better, knowledgeable in their field and everything. There is proven paths. My question that I ponder with, and for my own dojo myself, is why aren't we taking the best and for our instructors and teaching them? Because knowing how to do a technique is one thing. Knowing how to teach it in the most effective way so the synapses and all that wiring takes place, I submit, is a totally different discipline. And I don't think we look at it that way.
Yeah, and I just, I think would be beneficial to have that. I think we're talking about half. So Eugene, you have the whole concept right now. So you have the whole, because this, you understand this other concept and all of this. But I don't know if Dr. Wasserman and I are as familiar with this other thing. So we kind of keep coming back to this void where we're talking about this better method that I don't know what it is, and I don't know what it's defined as or whatever. I understand parts of it, but what these new methods, these different things, I can't intelligently speak to that or compare and contrast because I'm only looking at one side
Yeah.
or
And that's how we're setting up the next podcast on this
yeah,
topic.
yeah, yeah.
Can I interject the last topic and then you guys can go any way you want? So would you think, I would think 95% of Aikidoists want to be the best they can be in Aikido. I would say the most of everybody. My question then, as I'm pondering it, how do they know what their best is? Right? I'm going to be my best for that technique or that thing. How do you know what your best is?
Well, you're never going to know what your best is until you push yourself.
I apologize, guys. We got an unknown caller. Go ahead.
I mean, that's the individual potential is an individual thing. It's not a one size fits all, and nobody is going to have any idea what their potential is until they start pushing their boundaries and see how far they can push them. Until you push that far, I don't know that an individual really knows what their boundaries are. You don't run 26 miles to train for a marathon, right? So you don't practice 26 miles to go run 26 miles. You don't. So you don't actually know if you can hit that 26 miles until the day you do it. And you practice and you prepare and all of that. I've never run a marathon, but and then on the day, if it's your first marathon, the most you've ever run is 20 miles. And today you got to go 26 and all your training. So, so you don't know what those boundaries are, or what the true potential is until you start pushing out towards those boundaries, beyond those boundaries, to get an idea of what that individual potential is. That's kind of how I see it.
Steve, go ahead, buddy.
Well, just like anything, it depends on individual student. And my philosophy since the day one of college, learning is infinite. And once you trade passion for glory, you stop learning, and then your ego takes over. You don't grow. So how do I know? I mean, you just always continuously to perfect yourself. And there's certain days that you can give 100%, but it's really 80%. But to me, it's 100%. As long as you're always trying to do 100%, that should be your main goal. There's days you won't perform 100% because that's life. But at least you're giving what you can for that day. Some days I can only give 50% because it's one of those times. But that's my 100% for that day. But my behind that philosophy is learning is infinite. I'm never going to stop learning. I will never know it all. And you have to be an open book. When you get somebody closed and with the ego, and you can see those kind of students right away, or teachers right away, that's where you learn to see the difference.
Beautiful said. Let me throw two things in there and see which hole we go down. So let me get my thought here. I got excited and now I forgot them. So what was I going to say? Oh man, I hate when that happens. I got what do you call that? The senior moment here. So let's say we have a student. I got it. Okay. First one, I'll go out here. Those in the comments, I really like to hear what you have to say about this. We all have heard this that says, life is a journey, right? I'm preparing for a test. I'm moving through. It's a journey. And I look back and I enjoy the journey. If maybe it's a good path, maybe not. Beautiful words. I would share with you the goal-oriented results. That's BS. Life, getting something is a process. Now, this is not a journey, because if you don't care where the heck you end up, it's a journey, right? If I'm getting a boat and I really don't care, I'm just going. But if I want to go to Australia, it's a process. I get the map, I look at it, I got to learn the compass. It's a process. The better I understand the process, or the better process I use, gives me the results that I desire.
Now I'm understanding you a little better, Eugene.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
No. But I can see what you're trying to say definitely now with that statement.
Yeah. So like if our students are, I've heard this a lot through my short Aikido career, but in my other professions, I hear this a lot too, and I'm able to get a better bearing of it. A person will say, okay, they're going for a test, and they performed and they go, hey, that was the best. Oh, you know what we hear? I'll go out on the limb here. In test committee, we get inside there, they test, they demo, we look at it, maybe they have to go again. And we say, well, that was the best that they could do. They brought it up and went higher. We're using that as a marker that's the best that they can do. Without a roadmap, without somewhere measuring what I'm doing, without setting that goal that says I'm going to train 4 times a week for the next 3 months, and keeping track of that and looking back, there's no way to know if that's my best, right? If I look and I only train, if I'm supposed to train 10 times and I train 3 times and I go, that's my best. That's not your best. That's not your best. It's you get it? It's your best is getting as close as to the 10. Okay, I almost got it. Okay, why didn't I do it? Why didn't I go? And then I make corrections. Okay, I only went 4 times. My best is up here. Everything below it is not your best because there's a reason you're not hitting it. Now, there is a small amount where you hit everything and it just, maybe you don't win the tournament, right? But the majority of time, we rely and come back on in training and say, well, that's my best. And you have no records of what you're keeping. You don't know where you are in your training. You don't know what your sensei wants you to do. And you come up and you say, that's my best. I submit to you, that's the journey. But you put a process in place, then you know if you're getting your best. So if you'd like to elaborate on that, or just you're crawling out of that rabbit hole saying, I ain't going down there with him. Go ahead. Aaron's got a grin, so I want to hear what he has to say. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm grinning, hiding. I'm hiding.
Hiding with Garrett.
No,
it around. We're exploring ideas as always.
Yeah, I can't argue that. It's. I mean, you're saying, to Dr. Wasserman's point, he's like, well, I had 50% this day, but Eugene, what you're saying is, well, no. If you're saying 50% is your best, 50% is not your best because there are all these factors that got in your way. So that day, you only had
for the goal, reaching the goal, the point. I've arrived. Now I can go back and look. Did I really do my best, or am I using it as a cover?
Can we say?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I've kind of talked about this over time. It's like, well, are you really doing your best in the sense of, say somebody, oh, well, I only have 2 nights a week. And it's like, well, maybe you could train more. But on the flip side of that, how does one person judge another and say, you could have done more if you wanted to? That's the gray area to me, in the sense of how do the idea is, how do we know if we're getting our best? How do we know if we're pulling our best out? Because you can always do more. You can always work an hour later. You can always do one more rep. You can always do one more. Almost, I don't see anybody today doing anything to failure ever. And maybe in the weight training days and 20 years ago, you'd see that in a gym or something, but I don't see people going to failure in Aikido, going to failure on the job. Work as hard as you can until you die, right? So part of that, it's a gray area, in as I see it, but I understand the point, and we have an inherent level or ability, and we should be able to rise to that occasion with the proper process and methods and desire. And what are the things that are standing in our way, whether it's a method, an ideology, or something else? What's in our way to preclude us from, attaining that? And for some of us, it could be my family, my special needs uncle, my what have you, that's keeping me from dedicating all of this time.
Can I interject on something? A saying that was good on that real quick. there's circumstances that come up where I can't get my goal, and most people will readjust their goals. And the good saying is, no, you don't readjust your goals. You readjust how you're going to get your goals. Right?
I can't. I would have to absolutely agree with that. Yeah, you don't lower the bar. You just figure out a different approach to get there.
What do you think, Steve? Interject, buddy.
Well, we've all experienced that. Right before my third dawn test, my brother passed away, and it was a month and a half prior. So we all have something that interferes with something. And what did I do? I just kept going forward much as possible, worked hard. Was it my best up there? It was the best for what I could do then. All right. I mean, I'm just being honest. And you mentioned, Eugene, for example, we have a student that pre-tests. We see what they've done. We got a baseline. Then they come back a month or two later, and then they test. Did they improve since that pre-test? Can you tell? But is that their best that they're doing? I think only an individual can answer that. I mean, we can try to have faith in someone saying that's not your best or that is your best, but we don't want to be too unrealistic of saying that's not your best. But if we see improvement, significant improvement, and they're doing the best they can, only they can answer that.
When we go with that in training, it sounds so, woo, there's no structure here. It's kind of like, no, just having fun. So that student comes into demo, they have a bad demo. We all have bad demos, right? And for the things, and then they come back, and if we go, well, they improved. And maybe they have. That's not good. It is, where's the standard? Where's the ball?
No. Let's say we have a standard.
They have to meet that minimum requirement.
Okay, you're right. Let's say they've met the standard, and the standard was at the pre-test. But then we see them a month and a half later, and improvement, significant amount. The standard's way down here, but the improvement is way up here. But is that their best? I can't answer that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I hope I didn't give the wrong illusion of that. That the way that if what your best is you have to evaluate. You have to go back and measure. You have to be able to. How do I know if my student's giving their best? Right. I have to have tools that are going to let me know that. And that's the difference between the journey and the process. And I'm sharing in this training segment that there is sound, polished strategies to add to our toolbox. And I think as a community, as we start to explore these and listen to everybody, how you implement them and everything, that it's only going to raise the level of Aikido, because if you look on YouTube and you look at it and you see something, and I know you wanted to do a podcast about how do you know what good Aikido is, right? Was that Steve? I think so, where we look at it and analyze it. And, is it, how do you know? What is there? If we keep in this, I don't know how to say it, but this untangible area, it's not going to work. For example, and then Sharon will close up. You will never see at a Zen monastery the students not sitting with beautiful posture. You will never see a Roshi not teaching exactly what's supposed to be in a way that they go for it, right? So the same thing within our training, putting it up, pulling on the right area. But I think I'm beating a dead horse right now. So any closing statements?
Yeah, I agree. It's an individual thing.
Isn't it an individual thing? Don't we have to have a way in my training that I know if I'm progressing?
Well, absolutely, but only I know inside if I'm giving 100%.
I agree.
I mean, there's days when I'm up there on the mat, I gave 100%, my 100%, and it looked 100%. And I've had days where I gave 100%, and my sensei told me it was 20%. Right? So
yeah,
it's a never evolving, evolution. And we can't forget that. We can't get caught up in a definition. You're defined, you're great, or you're
No.
I don't know. We just have to be open to that revolving wheel keep on turning, and just, the wheel in the sky keeps turning, and we just gotta every day, there's your answer on train, train, train. That's your answer on getting good or
Mhm.
getting to be your best.
Yeah, the purpose was to open the door, just to walk through a little bit and kick it around to see if anything out of the podcast did to get away from this illusion of it's a journey in my training. It's not a journey, it's a process. And through the process, the journey comes. The better I understand these processes and I have to deal with them. And as an instructor, if I know how to utilize these better, I'm able to maybe train better, teach better, and so on. So why don't you close this up, Aaron? Any closing thoughts, buddy?
No, it's just the idea of personal potential is
Right.
it's a tough thing to grapple with because potential and the amount of effort and things like that. These are, like I think Dr. Wasserman is saying, they're kind of individual, personal, things, and
Right.
we can always, we said before, but it's almost like you can always do one more. You can put in one more minute. You can put in, so how do we ever say we're doing our best if we go to bed and we still haven't arrived yet, right? It's like, well, we could put in an extra hour. We
Yeah.
can always do more. And so that's almost a insurmountable obstacle to put onto a person, an individual, ourselves. As if we were to put onto ourselves, we can always, we are able to always do more. But it's an interesting concept.
There's a Stoic saying that said, when are you going to wake up and decide to live your life to the fullest of your potential? Where that means I'm going to go for everything. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go. And it says, when you do that, imagine how you will affect the world.
True, but just like the saying, there's a season, turn, turn, turn. There's
Pardon?
a time and place, because if you live on that premise, you're going to be pretty exhausted. I've gone through that. I'm going to give 100%. I'm going to give 1,000% every day.
You're being intelligent of your approach, because taking yourself to the edge where you can't perform is no good either.
Well, I've taken my edge when I became a workaholic many years ago, and it was like a never enough. Like Aaron said, one more hour, another page, another this, another that. And I was doing good, but man, you wake up one day going, there's nothing left.
That's good if it's reaching your goal.
True.
You have a goal, you're working like that to get there.
But that goal can't kill you either. There's a fine balance.
That's right, buddy. And that's what I'm saying in our training, when we're going into the dojo, when we're teaching and everything. I think wrestling with these concepts and everything, and as a community to go, hey, Aaron, what is, like I asked you today, what is that role thing you're doing, right, with new students? I need to know that knowledge, because I want to expand. How can I reach across better? Steve, what are you doing for rolling and stuff? As a community, instead of hoarding this information, we start sharing it a little bit more, maybe organized sharing somehow, I don't know, to reach where we're getting results, not activities.
Yeah.
Tough topic, no?
This was a tough one. This was a tough one. Yep, this was a tough one.
Well, I appreciate you guys throwing it out there and everything and going for it. I learned a lot. I wanted to show a quick shout out. The podcast we did on Aikido and spiritual had probably the biggest effect on my own personal and training. I was very amazed of what came out of that, because nothing's pre-planned here other than just the topics. And some of the stuff that you guys said really was excellent. And not only for me, go ahead.
Aaron's books helped a lot, and he had a really good insight to that. And that was a learning experience,
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, that was very good. I recommend anybody out there to go and listen to the podcast. Aikido and the Spiritual, I think it's called. But once again, we appreciate everybody who's been here listening to all this. If you find any value, we'd greatly appreciate if you hit the like button, the subscribe button. There we go. Hit that like button, and also notifications. But more important, if you could share. that really helps with the algorithms and everything. Just anybody, just get us out there a little bit. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, my friends, you guys are awesome, and I appreciate your time. And I look forward to our next podcast together.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
One moment. Stop.